I've told you this already. Like, affirmative action is not necessarily a decent solution to any of the racial issues in society. The Band-Aid, which is why it was allowed to exist. Because it's not like they were down to offer serious economic restitution. What? The kid who got affirmative action overturned Calvin Yang because he was mad he didn't get into Harvard, was a Fridays for Future and Youth climate strike organizer, led students for Michael Bloomberg, worked for the Green Party, and is now a member of the Canadian Conservative Party? Wait, how? I had really good grades and a spot in Canada's 30 under 30, but Harvard rejected me, so I hatched a plan to get into my dream school by overturning affirmative action in the Supreme Court.
History of Asian America. Today's decision has started a new chapter in the saga of the history of Asian Americans.
This proves my suspicion about Canadians further. Remember when I told you Canadians that come to America are either fucking super cool or just the absolute worst and nothing in between? This one is obviously not super cool. No mid-Canadians. Only fucking gigantic assholes, like the worst assholes you've ever fucking seen. Or some pretty sick people, pretty talented, cool people. This is exactly, it fits in that second category, the asshole category, so perfectly. Flipped. Hasanabi likes punching down. Says Egoist TV. What are you doing? I don't even know what's happening. Why are you spamming this? Bro, are you okay? Brother. You good? Punching down. Let's go. Hasanabi likes punching down. Clipped. At Hasanabi loves punching down. Clipped. Called Nick poor. The joke, man. You okay? I think it's because you called me broke. Yeah. Can you explain the difference between capitalism and corporatism? What? Capitalism is corporatism. People that say corporatism is different than capitalism don't understand how capitalism works. Anyway, let's watch this fucking weirdo.
It marks the promise of a new beginning, a resurgence of the principles of the American dream, and a return to the egalitarian principles for all in this shining city on a hill. Today's decision.
This is a good day for Asians surrounded by white people that run the fucking company or run the org that he's a part of, that he's the mouthpiece for. By the way, I didn't realize a Canadian was unwinding like American civil rights. I think if you do that, you should not be allowed in the country. Like, I am so in favor of deporting motherfuckers that like come to the country and try to roll back civil liberties or any kind of amenities given to people as like a Band-Aid solution for all the racial wrongs that were committed towards them. You come in here and you do that, you're gone, Ted Cruz. I'm looking right at you, another fucking Canadian piece of shit. Tom McDonald. Oh. It's a civil right to be able to discriminate against people based on race. Yeah. You're right. That's what I'm saying. Yes. In your mind, you've made up a fantasy that like they are purposely saying like, oh, you're Asian. Oh, you're white. We don't want you here. We have a racial quota to abide by, right? That is what you said. No, that is not what I said. I chose my words very carefully, as a matter of fact, because I know that there's dickheads like thousands of you in here. By the way, none of you are getting into fucking Harvard, which is pretty funny. Like, your life is going to consistently continue being fucking miserable, number one. Number two, you're not getting into any of the top institutions. And number three, if you are Asian or white, you now no longer have the, affirmative action prevented me from getting in thing that you could have told you're disappointed as parents. But they all know you're a fucking loser at heart. Okay? They know you've been a loser from the jump. They started suspecting it when you were in kindergarten, but they were like, nah, he's just a little off. It's fine. He'll recover. And by the time you were in high school, okay, you were, at a certain point, your parents were agreeing with the bullies that were bullying you. You know what I mean? Secretly, they wouldn't tell you to your face, But they were like, yeah, we get it. There's not really much we can do. Hopefully he can get into any college so we can get his ass out of the fucking house. You know what I mean? Maybe even get divorced immediately afterwards because we held on to this fucking bullshit relationship that you ruined, by the way. You're the reason. In many circumstances, almost 99.9% of circumstances, the child is not responsible for the parents divorcing, but you did that to your parents. Okay? And now, here you are, trying to cope with the reality that you've been an abject failure your entire fucking life, and maybe for a brief moment you could just like write a couple fucking lines in a dumbass Twitch streamer's chat, make yourself feel alive again. You know what I mean? Oh fuck, I really owned him with this argument. Okay? When people ask their parents about them, the parents quickly change the subject. They're like, "Yeah, it's fine. Don't. Fine. He's off twitching again, I think. I don't know what he's doing." Anyway. I love whenever I say this to someone and get like really fucking harsh with them because there's got to be some really fucking awful things that have gone down in their lives. Other chatters that literally will go, "Oh, dude, you're actually talking about me, so I need to retaliate as best as I can." Look, he's still writing it. Brother, get lithium, okay? Get medical help immediately. Seek out medication and try to fucking save your brain. I wasn't even talking to you, but you're the one who's fucking writing it in all caps, freaking the fuck out. Calm down. There's one person who needs to be calmed down. It's you, my man. Get medication immediately, okay? I keep saying fat neck. He's hallucinating. Fat neck means you have a big head? Thank you. I agree. Anyway, he's pressed for no reason. I wasn't even talking to you. You just were like, "Oh, I'm catching a stray." Like you felt personally attacked so much that you were like, "What can I say about this guy? Oh God, calm down. We'll keep him. We're not banning either of those guys." Anyway. Oh, where were we? We were, before I started unloading onto that one chatter, because there's no other way that someone can be so fucking pathetic as to literally take matters into their own hands, to turn around and be like, "Actually, I know you were talking about like the Band-Aid solution that was offered to black people, like the tiniest little thing that wasn't even a fucking real restitution for any of the problems that systemic racism has caused for them." I decided to choose to turn around and say, well, those racial, the healing for those racial wounds is actually racism in and of itself, which is the Supreme Court's perspective on the matter. I was describing my position. Okay? If wrongs historically have been committed on racial boundaries, okay, then correcting those wrongs, righting those wrongs, must also be done on the same boundaries. Okay? You can't shoot person A and then turn around and give money to person B. Okay? And be like, "Well, you know, it's fine. I gave money to person B." You got to give money to the person A. You got to help heal person A, the person that you shot. Decision means that laws that benefit a race that has been historically discriminated against are unconstitutional. Race-neutral laws are only the new standard. If this guy just knew that banning legacy admission would free up 1/5, 1/4 of the spots at a lot of Ivy League schools, then he would have sought to ban legacy admissions instead of crying like a little baby. If only he knew that 74% of white students at Harvard are actually legacy admissions, he would have an entirely different perspective on the matter, I think. But of course he wouldn't. Also, that person's parents are not fucking legacy Harvard alumni. You know what I mean? He's just fantasizing about a fucking racial segregation that does not exist in college campuses. You know what I mean? Nobody's ever going to convince me they've been discriminated against in this way as a white person. This is part of the reason they got a bunch of Asian fail sons to go along with their racist plot. Yeah, because they tried to do it with white people and everyone laughed at them. So they were like, "Oh yeah, let's bring some Asian people here." Don't you get the same outcome with socioeconomic criterias? Most likely. And that is probably what it's going to substitute into. Might even be better. Extra Emily has rated you. Oh, thank you, Extra Emily. Shouts out to your dad. He seems like a very cool guy. M-Cell raid. Hope you had a good stream. Imagine being Canadian and trying to make America worse. Yeah. It's like, listen, if you're Canadian, stay the fuck in Canada. Wait, wasn't Extra Emily, what college did you go to? I heard somewhere that you went to Harvard. Columbia? Oh, nice. Utilize existing anti-black, anti-brown, colorist sentiment in some Asian conservative communities to cudgel against those groups. Yeah. And also the model minority myth on top of that as well. And it worked because I always say this. I said this about the transports thing. And the same principle exists here. Americans have this like weird understanding of this false notion of meritocracy where they think like the concept of fairness trumps all. So when you can convince someone that like this shit was unfair, and you absolutely have convinced a gigantic swath of Americans that this is unfair, that they're only like letting black people that don't deserve to be there into these colleges, and you're doing that by like telling Asian people and white people they can't go to these colleges even though they deserve it, and not like the holistic approach, and not a racial quota, but instead a holistic approach that determines why someone should be able to get into these schools. They believe it. It also falls into their like understanding of the world that they themselves are not necessarily at fault. And it's actually systemic discrimination against white and Asian people. That is the reason why they couldn't fucking make it. You know what I mean? That's it. Now you don't have that. So how are you going to cope with the reality that if you place this level of emphasis, this level of importance on getting into an Ivy League and you don't make it, how are you going to cope with that reality? The reality that you're a fucking failure all on your own, I guess. You know? Are you going to go to the Anime Expo? Yes, I plan to go to the Anime Expo tomorrow. Alongside Connor Dog Veterans Affairs Office and also alongside Ludwig. I'm proud to say I've made it despite being a white man in America. Yeah, same, brother. You know, society has had it out against us white men, okay? For far too long, we've been under attack, it seems. But some of us still make it, you know? We worked hard, and nothing else, by the way. Definitely not luck. We overcame great odds. And we persisted. Oh, man, it's hard. Hard being a white man. Never forget that one of the first school integration cases was Asian people trying to get their children into white schools, and the court said, nope, back to the railroads. I did not know that. Okay. Are you white? Well, according to some. I think so. Dude, you know this guy's a hardcore insult, by the way. Try adding affirmative action to some pussy, dude. What is
For
this?
more than 50 years, colleges have taken different approaches towards admissions to make their campuses more diverse. Considering an applicant's race, generally called affirmative action, has long been standard at universities from UPenn to Harvard, but not anymore. The Supreme Court has ruled that no college in the US can consider an applicant's race in admissions. 9 states have already banned this practice. California did almost 25 years ago. Just enough time for a detailed study on its consequences.
Once you have the data set in hand, there's an awful lot you can learn, honestly, pretty quickly, right? Basically what I'm doing is just differences in means. What happened to the kids after 98? What happened to the kids before 98? Just those comparisons tell you an awful lot about not just what happened in California, but I think what we can expect to happen across the country.
Here's how affirmative action changed college admissions and what the future of higher education might look like without it. Before affirmative action, selecting which of these student applicants would be accepted was fairly simple. Most colleges would essentially filter students. They'd set factors like a minimum GPA or a minimum test score, and voila, there's your pool of accepted students. Obviously, the more selective the school, the higher those standards were. But
a big part of both test scores and grades are pre-18 educational investment and, honestly, non-educational investment. The degree to which you had a stable household, the degree to which you had some notion.
There are some criticisms about affirmative action that ignores class. Is that true? I think affirmative action is a separate thing The real thing that ignores class is legacy admissions. So if you want to tackle classism in these institutions, then 1,000,000% you should tackle that instead of affirmative action. That is a significantly larger factor and significantly more problematic than affirmative action. Make no mistake. Okay, I've told you this already. Like, affirmative action is not necessarily a decent solution to any of the racial issues that persist in society. Not the Band-Aid, which is why it was allowed to exist. Because it's not like they were down to offer serious economic restitution in the form of reparations, for example. So, legacy admissions don't ignore class. They are all about class. Yes, I'm saying legacy admissions are classist.
Notion of being able to focus on your work. The better a high school you go to, the better the test score you get. The better sort of access to resources outside of high school, like tutoring or other services that you had access to before 18, the better you test.
It's clear if you break down SAT scores by the background of the student. Students from higher income households score higher. Same if you look at who grew up in a household with a parent with a graduate degree versus no degree. That also reflects in race, with Black and Hispanic students scoring lower than white and Asian students. So in the 1970s, when UC Berkeley's admissions really just looked at GPA and test scores, the student population was less than 5% Black and Hispanic.
Students who might have been really high ability just weren't able to get the kind of education that would lead them to the kind of high standardized tests that would get them into a school like Berkeley. These schools recognized that they needed some way of admitting those students, and so they started affirmative action policies to try to bring in students from sort of every part of, in this case, the state of California.
So in the 80s, they began considering race in their admissions decisions. It worked. By the 90s, they would chart students on a social diversity index. If you were low income and a minority and had moderate grades and test scores, you were in. If you were high income and white, you needed higher scores to get in. Some colleges, like the UC Davis School of Medicine, used quotas, utilizing a similar filtering system, but a few spots would be reserved for minority applicants. In the late 70s, a white student named Backy fell here. Not good enough to get in among other white applicants, but with higher test scores and GPA than the minority students who got in. He sued, claiming discrimination. It made it to the Supreme Court, he won, and was admitted. The court ruled that while the goal of achieving a diverse student body is sufficiently compelling to justify consideration of race in admissions decisions, specific quotas went too far. More than 24 Supreme Court cases have followed, including the landmark Grutter v. Bollinger in 2003, which upheld that race could be considered as part of a highly individualized, holistic review of each applicant's file. That's essentially how affirmative action has worked the last 20 years. Instead of just filtering a pool of applicants, most colleges look at each person individually. Like Harvard will look at SAT and GPA, but also things like extracurricular activities, essays, awards, life experiences, recommendations, leadership, and yes, race. But this is exactly what the Supreme Court has now struck down. In two separate cases against Harvard and the University of North Carolina, plaintiffs argued this holistic approach was just a cover for discrimination against white and Asian students. The Supreme Court agreed, ruling that eliminating racial discrimination means eliminating all of it. The student must be treated based on his or her experiences as an individual, not on the basis of race. Many universities have for too long done just the opposite, which means in this holistic review, race can no longer be considered.
To the degree that these universities want to maintain their current level of racial diversity, California has shown that that is infeasible, at least given the policies that California has tried to implement.
In the 90s, Californians voted for Proposition 209, which banned public universities from considering race. Zach Bleemer conducted a massive study in California, following students that applied before and after Prop 209, looking at where they eventually enrolled, graduated, and then at their wage statements.
So you can see, so long as they stay in the state of California, where they work and how much they earn all the way through 2020, 25 years almost after the affirmative action ban was implemented.
What he found was that Black and Hispanic enrollments at more selective schools, like Berkeley, dramatically fell when they couldn't include race in their admissions process. Moderately selective schools had almost no change, but enrollment at less selective schools actually rose. Because most Black and Hispanic students didn't not go to college, they just went to less esteemed ones.
You got this cascade effect of Black and Hispanic students on average enrolling at a university that's just a little bit less selective than the universities they used to have access to. Kids who used to go to Berkeley are now going to UC Davis. Kids who used to go to UC Davis are now going to UC Santa Cruz. What happened is pretty substantial negative ramifications for these students.
They became less likely to earn STEM degrees, less likely to go to graduate school. Those with the lowest GPA and test scores became less likely to even graduate. And overall, Black and Hispanic students earned less in their careers than those admitted before Prop 209.
One thing we've learned from affirmative action bans is that the kids who are admitted to more selective universities as a result of race-based affirmative action tend to receive greater value from those institutions in terms of the degree to which those institutions lead them to more successful jobs or more success generally in the labor market than the white or Asian students who tend to take their places after the end of affirmative action programs.
Bleemer has also studied the effects of what's called race-neutral admissions policies, which can include outreach and income-based admissions, as has Georgetown University. They both found the same result.
It seems like all of these race-neutral alternatives that universities can implement have a tendency toward increasing the diversity of campuses, but they don't get you anywhere close to the level of racial diversity that's provided by race-based affirmative action.
Harvard said if it were to not include race in their holistic review, Black and Hispanic enrollment will decline by almost half. Berkeley, even though it has made strides since Prop 209 to enroll more Hispanic students, the Black student population is still below where it was when it could consider race in admissions.
I think we'll see declines in Black and Hispanic enrollment, potentially in some cases quite severe declines in the next couple of years. And as a result, you're going to have this sort of downward shift, Black and Hispanic students enrolling at less selective schools than they had access to previously. There's no clear silver bullet for such universities just to maintain diversity as it is right now.
Fucking schools are paid. Why do they have to obey this ruling? Private, you mean? Well, because they... Okay. The ruling in and of itself is addressing a problem that does not exist. Do you understand? Limiting schools to certain criteria and what you should look at is really fucking stupid. But you can't really do that. So what you try to do basically is claim that like schools have racial quotas and they are abiding by said racial quotas by, not allowing certain races of certain people from certain backgrounds to come into the school and instead opening the doors to others. When schools, time and time again, have said, we have a holistic approach to admissions. We have a holistic approach to admissions. We are looking at your background, including your race, as a part of these holistic approaches to admissions. Okay? Because in the United States of America, your class position, especially your class position built on top of race, plays a role in your development. Okay? It's ridiculous. We already know what color blindness means in a society where systemic racism and systemic discrimination still certainly exists. When people say, oh, I see no color, or I'm colorblind, they're just saying, I don't see the injustices that certain races face or certain people face due to their race. That's it. So that's precisely what the Supreme Court is trying to enforce here. It's not like it's not like people going to turn around and change the K through 12 education, especially in public institutions, or the funding mechanism for K through 12 in public schools, where the overwhelming majority of black and brown children attend. Okay? That's how it works. Schools actually have quotas? Maybe. Ultimately, I'm pretty sure quotas were banned. But regardless, ultimately, the reason why there is a certain racial makeup in schools is because it reflects the racial makeup of modern American society, okay? Which universities certainly recognize as the best approach to creating a modern environment. College is supposed to make you a smarter person. College is supposed to get you ready for civilized society. Doesn't matter if you're from some bumfuck town. Doesn't matter if you're from a segregated, gated white community. No matter what, you're supposed to go to college in a diverse environment and learn to behave. That is the real world. That is the purpose of college. Purpose of college education. That is the point of why some college campuses want to have a specific racial makeup that is more balanced, similar to the racial makeup of the United States of America. Okay? So on that front, hitting a real visible quota versus maintaining a level of diversity in your college campuses is just two different ways of, slicing the apple in a similar fashion. Okay? America loves diversity. Well, it doesn't matter if America loves diversity or not. America is diverse. More diverse than a lot of other countries, as a matter of fact. That's how it works. No matter what. I work in pharma, don't hate me chat, and clinical trial diversity is a huge topic and policy push, but they do it exactly as half-assed as the way they do affirmative action. If you do either one without actually correcting for why you ignore certain people in the first place, you'll never reap the benefits, nor will anyone else. America claims to love diversity. It doesn't matter what America claims. We're talking about what America is. So you disagree with Mehdi Hasan on the quota versus diversity level distinction? A quota has to be rigorously enforced. That's the main distinction, no? I mean, I don't know what Mehdi Hasan's take is on it. But my take on it is that a quota is supposed to be like, we need 10 black people. Whereas, and it wasn't Mehdi Hasan. I think you're talking about Hasan Minhaj. Whereas a need for diversity is like, we want to make sure that the makeup of our student body accurately reflects society. The whole point of conservatives framing quota is that less qualified applicants are displacing more qualified whites. I mean, that's how they're framing it, and that's what they're claiming. But the qualification is not stuck on the metric that they claim it's supposed to be on. That's the point. If the qualification of a student enrolling in college exclusively revolved around your GPA, then that's one thing. But that's not what college campuses want. They don't want the fucking biggest nerds, okay? Do you get it? Do you understand? It's not just about whoever looks the best on paper. Qualification for colleges do not exclusively revolve around whatever the fuck these dumbasses claim it revolves around. Oftentimes they claim it revolves around what your grades are, what your SAT scores are, and maybe a couple extracurriculars that you put on your resume. That evaluation is not the case. I don't even think it ever was the case, but it certainly isn't now. Okay? That's why you write an essay. There wouldn't be a need to write an essay to share your perspective, to share your experiences in a better way if it was just about how you look on paper, what your resume looks like, how many extracurriculars you've done. You end up beating your hardcore run to Diablo 4? I did, yes. What do you mean they don't consider grades, or did I misunderstand? They look at your grades, yes, but your grades are not the final concluding factor. It's one of many factors. Your SAT test scores, your grades, these are only some parts that make you whole. Are we really trying to explain to Twitch chat how unis and jobs don't want nerds but want more well-rounded, balanced, socialized people, lol? I mean, they want nerds too, don't get me wrong, but also it's not like Twitch chat is all fucking nerds that excel in school either. Let's be real. In Finland, they literally only look at grades. Great. That's how they do it in Finland. Finland and Norway, which is another place that you were talking about with respect to grades, also have a significantly more balanced education system leading up to university. And I don't even believe that they only look at fucking grades in Finland. I'm just taking you at face value here, but I don't even believe that that's the case. Doesn't Finland have like incredible fucking new age modern educational principles that they abide by, which is like very different, and Americans would scoff at it actually? UCs only care about ECs, awards, and essays. Got rejected by UCLA and UCB with perfect SAT and grades. Wait, really? I thought UCs only cared about SAT and grades. I thought that was the argument.
Upper middle class black children are not failing standardized tests.
Yes,
they're doing
because
just as
they're
well as other
rich.
middle class kids.
So
yeah,
then
there
there
you
is
go.
not a race problem.
There's a class
There's
issue.
a poverty problem that has been exacerbated by first slavery, then segregation, then
Yes.
Jim Crow,
Yes.
then bias.
Yes.
But what are the answers to help to help ameliorate all of these problems?
Let's say it at the
And
same
that's-
time. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Reparations. No?
Reparations in the form of making school teachers work 240 days a year instead of 180.
You
Make
want them to
work
work more?
8 hours a day. Make school go from 8:30 in the morning to
Oh, fuck? I mean, she was right to say that. That counter is wild.
5:30 in the evening.
What?
This is absolutely correct. You cannot dismantle the legacy of racism without addressing race. That's it. Racial violence oftentimes manifests in the form of class violence. That is the reality. Black people are in the position that they're in because they've been relegated to the underclass, a permanent underclass, a permanent position. They've been systematically discriminated against. But ultimately, this was done on the basis of race for a very long time, a lot longer than America has. In the United States of America, that racial disparity existed for a lot longer than it did not. And some would even say correctly that it still exists to this day. Okay? Don't know why we can't have a normal conversation about this without everybody just taking it to like a million different directions. Adam Conover. Unbelievable. If you need to prove to the companies we are striking against do not care about diversity and inclusion, here it is. The Writers Guild will continue to fight for inclusion in our industry no matter what the companies or the courts say or do. News. Warner Bros. Discovery cuts respected diversity and inclusion leader Karen Horn amid restructuring. Industry-wide retrenchment is leading to the departures of several major Hollywood diversity chiefs. I'm going to be honest with you. This was already a fucking... this was already like a position that I don't know how great it was to begin with. It's just like last to come, first to go type situation where they're like, we're restructuring. We're going to be more lean. What's your stance on Asians being screwed over for overachieving? Bro, this is so loaded that it's like, I don't know how to loaded more than a powder keg, brother. What a question. A lot of Asian students load up on sports, music, and other extracurriculars on top of maintaining top GPAs and still get rejected. What's your stance on Asians being screwed over for overachieving? First of all, which Asians? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, you're just looping up, like, you know, hundreds of thousands of students into one neat little overgeneralization. What's your reasoning for pretending that it's because of 4 black students? What? Yeah, that's a great question, actually. Bro, to all of these Asian students who feel fucked over by affirmative action, I ask you, the percentage of the student body that is, the percentage of the student bodies is black is marginal. It's tiny, okay? The black population in America in general is, 13%. The percentage of black students in these colleges are tiny. The percentage of legacy admissions almost always is significantly larger than the percentage of black students on college campus. Okay? So even from that perspective, it's silly. It's stupid. If you think that there is an unjustifiable quota system or an unjustifiable leg up that people are getting, and you want to eliminate the problem, why the fuck are you trying to tackle a much smaller issue rather than the much larger one that absolutely plays a role in destroying this meritocracy argument that you think exists? What are legacy admissions? I am not American. Legacy admissions are a process when you have an alumni or a teacher or someone working for the college, and then their children get into the college, even though their scores are oftentimes much lower than what would have to get. Anti-black sentiment is so ingrained into Asian and South Asian communities based on affirmative action. I've heard this shit my whole life from my family and friends. Yeah, I mean, it's the white man finding a really good way to, instill white supremacist values in every other subsect of the population, while simultaneously also harming said marginalized communities as well. Yet another fucking way of doing it. Anyway. I'm a guidance counselor at a Title I school. My hope is more colleges become need blind, do away with legacy admissions, and make SAT scores optional because these are all tied to students' socioeconomic status. This will have the biggest impact on the most selective schools, so these policy changes would even the playing field more. An example of legacy, I went to school with a kid whose dad was personal friends with the Dean of Columbia. He knew he got in a month or more before Ivy Day decisions were released. New rare Trump just launched. Trump and Walt Nauta spotted at Pat's King of Steaks in Philadelphia. Dude. Pat's is the perfect place to go to. Wait, was it Pat's or Geno's that was more racist? Or are they both racist? Which one's the one that says if you can't order in English, get the fuck out? I mean, both are racist. It's Philly cheesesteaks, let's be real. But like one is more racist than the other. These are 2 famous tourist Philly cheesesteak spots right across from one another. One of them literally has a sticker. They compete against one another on who's more racist. One of them used to, I don't know if it still does, but when I went, had a sticker that literally said, if you can't order in English, you can't order at all. Ironic because it's also objectively the worst Philly cheesesteak you can get in Philadelphia. And I do love Philly cheesesteaks. Don't get me wrong. It's delicious. Okay? But it's pretty funny that like these guys who happen to be like tourist spots, they just are known for like being iconic Philly cheesesteak locations, even though they are objectively some of the worst Philly cheesesteaks you can get in Philadelphia. How can they know what the sticker says if they don't speak English? Brother, that sticker is not for non-English speakers. That sticker is for the Americans who read that and go, hell yeah, this is my spot. They're having a mid-off, dude, in that corner right there. I thought you said racists cook the best. What the fuck? This is one of those instances. Well, it's South. Man, it's Philadelphia. There's plenty of racists who aren't as overt with their racism that make delicious cheesesteaks, is my point, okay? I understand my statements are overgeneralizations, but what are you supposed to say when immigrants work their butts off and then target? Dude, you're still doing it. You haven't stopped. We know that white women actually benefit most, and we recognize that our minority brethren still need help as well. But why does it still need to be the model minority that gets shot down? Dude, if you put the model minority in air quotes, why are you still literally farming the model minority sentiment here? I love that even when you accept people's made-up scenarios on things, they're still wrong. A different angle is that if there isn't a quota, it would stand to reason that more Asian people wouldn't get accepted without a minimum quota. It's the same as minimum wage. People think if you remove the minimum magically, businesses will give you more. The reason why you put model minority in air quotes is because it's not real. It's not a real concept. It was carefully crafted by, some ways, the American government. Why are people so bent on what school they get accepted to? It doesn't determine their life or success, and they always get into a college anyway. Yeah, if model minority was a real concept, then Nigerians would be considered the model minority. I wonder why they don't. Wonder why. And that's like way more specific than just an entire race of people. You know? Just saying. This is not based on the racist bell curve shit. What? No, I'm talking about fucking college admissions. What? I'm bringing up college admissions numbers and also the most educated. Nigerians happen to be the ethnic group that has the largest percentage of higher education, specifically graduate school degrees. That's just the truth. It's not like has anything to do with IQ or anything like that. We had this exact same conversation yesterday, and people got mad at me for it yesterday because one issue for a lot of young people that strikes at their heart. You know what I mean? They get very frustrated. Anyway, the one aspect where affirmative action won't work is the top of the hour ad break. Everybody gets hit.